I was resistant to the idea of investigating crypto. I'm a longtime investigative reporter at Bloomberg. My thing basically is financial fraud. I actually thought it wasn't a good target for investigation because it all seemed so obvious. I like untangling a fraud and figuring out how it works and how the guys who are running it think that they might be able to get away with it. But with crypto, hey, check out my new coin. It's the best thing since Bitcoin. And then it was going up to the moon. And I felt like there wasn't really anything for me to investigate there. I went to this conference in Miami in 2021. Even though I was skeptical of crypto, I kind of thought when I went to this conference, I would be meeting, bankers who wanted to use crypto to make payments faster, or people who had built like new consumer apps that used crypto that would appeal to the masses. And instead, I met people with some of the craziest business plans I'd ever heard of. I met Sam Bankman-Fried, who was then 29 years old, the richest guy under 30 in the world. He was in town to rename the Miami Heat arena after his crypto exchange FTX. And I met this guy Alex Mashinsky from Celsius, who's kind of been forgotten to history, but he told me his business plan was, you give me your crypto, I'll pay interest on it up to 19%. If you want a loan from me, the loan rate is 0 or something very low. And I'm like, this business plan is so backwards. How much money have you raised for this? He was like, oh yeah, we got like about 20 billion under management. I was just looking around like, is anyone else going to investigate this? These people, there's real money at stake here. The crypto guys hadn't invented anything that was useful to anybody, but they were making a lot of real money from real people, and that it would be valuable to investigate that.
What was the most revealing conversation you had?
I speak to so many of the biggest players in this crypto world, and they are telling me I'm just continually disappointed by how poorly thought through their business plans are. And that maybe I'm the sucker for always coming in expecting to hear a little more. A moment that really took my skepticism to the next level, I was at Sam Bankman-Fried. I hung out with him at FTX's offices in the Bahamas for a few days. And I'd come back about a month later. He was hosting this conference as like at the peak of his success. They just advertised in the Super Bowl. And anybody who was in the Sam Bankman-Fried ecosystem came to this conference. He was interviewed on stage with Tom Brady. It was very boring. He was on stage with Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, who were paid quite a bit to be there. They also had a room at this conference that was basically for all the crypto guys to pitch their projects to the assembled press. And so I had a series of interviews with all these crypto founders. And these were, it seems silly to say it now, but Sam Bankman-Fried he was supposed to be the most legit guy in crypto. He was supposed to be the honest guy who was not saying, Dogecoin to the moon. The one who was going to bring who's trained on Wall Street, who's going to bring a more disciplined approach to the industry. So I thought maybe these people who were pitching their projects at his conference would be like a cut above. But instead, it was one crazy thing after another. I'll just tell you one. I was talking to this guy about he said he had a spaceship video game, and I'm pretty nerdy. So I was like, great, love spaceships. And he was like, well, in this game, you buy your spaceship with crypto, and then you earn like a special token when you do the battles. And this was kind of hot at the time. It was called Play to Earn. There's a whole part in the book about this bizarre craze in the Philippines for a different Play to Earn game. But I was trying to be open-minded. So I was like, and the guy said, we've already sold $300 million worth of spaceships. I was like, okay, you know what? Great. I'm a big nerd. Let's play your spaceship crypto game. And he was like, whoa. The game does not exist. It's years off. We just sold the spaceships, but the game part is hypothetical. And I just felt it was so typical that everyone was so focused on speculation, and so little effort was put into developing things that that anyone would use. And actually that night, I was at a party for something called Degenerate Trash Pandas. And I met a programmer and I was complaining about this. And I was saying, there's nothing, I am skeptical. I would tell people I was skeptical in general if we were talking. I'd say, there's nothing here that any regular person would ever want to use. And he said to me, huh, it's interesting yet you would say that. It was like no one had said this to him before. He's like, why is it that you think that is important? And he wanted to talk about it more. He's like, what, can I have your card? Can we talk about it more? But because I'm a bit old school, I think that when it comes to an investment, in the long run, its value has to be it has to be based on a profit that a company is making, or if you've got a new blockchain that people use, that people have to pay fees to use that blockchain, that could make the coin valuable. But with crypto, for a couple of years there, it was just like magic. Like this money was coming from nowhere. And a lot of these crypto companies are still sitting on huge piles of money from back when it was really easy to raise it.
What was your conversation with Jack Mallers like?
Now, in the crypto world, the Bitcoin people, they don't like to be called crypto people. They think Bitcoin is like the one true coin, and that a lot of the other guys are scammers. So Mallers is one of these Bitcoin guys, and he has a company that facilitates Bitcoin use. He might be 30 years old now, but he was a pretty young guy. And my introduction to him was at this conference in Miami. And this was the highlight of the conference. And he's up on stage. I don't know who he is. He's pacing back and forth. He's wearing a hoodie. He's he's a small guy. He's got curly hair. He looks even younger than he is. And he's talking about, it was kind of hard to tell. He's talking about some kind of surfing vacation in El Salvador. And he's cursing a lot. And he's getting really worked up. And he's talking about how Bitcoin, there's this experiment in the surf town, and it's going to help all the poor people in this town. And Bitcoin's can really do something for the poor people in El Salvador. And then he hits play and it's on the big screen, there's Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, who's got a videotape message for the Bitcoin conference. And he's saying, from now on in El Salvador, Bitcoin will be legal currency. Everyone will use Bitcoin in El Salvador. And Mallers starts talking about this, and he had somehow helped get this idea to the president. And he's talking about this plan. He starts crying, like he's bawling on stage. And in saltier language, he starts screaming, I will die on this hill. I will die on this hill. And I'm just like, what is going on? What is this? Some sort of joke? Why is this guy crying? And I look around, the audience is dead serious. Other people have tears in their eyes. And so El Salvador did do this Bitcoin experiment. The country's already dollarized, and they didn't replace the dollar with Bitcoin. What they did was they offered every citizen a $30 incentive to download this Bitcoin app on their phone. And they told every business you have to accept Bitcoin. And what basically happened is that people took the $30. They got like their cousin who knows how to use computers well to sign up and get the $30. And then no one used Bitcoin. Like I went there to investigate. There was nothing to investigate. There was nothing doing with this Bitcoin plan. And the businesses I felt ashamed because I would ask them if I could use the Bitcoin to pay. And they would, they'd come up with excuses. They'd be like, oh, like the manager locked it in the closet. They were just so sick of these tourists who are coming to ask them to use Bitcoin. But the funny thing with Mallers is that before I went to El Salvador, but once it was already pretty well established that this experiment had failed, I interviewed him again. It was 1 year after the crying speech at another Bitcoin conference. And I thought to myself, well, it would be natural, right? You would say, hey, that was a pretty big deal. Everyone loved your speech last year. Can you bring me up to date on what happened with this experiment in El Salvador? But it was actually super uncomfortable. And he said, I don't want to talk about that. And then I was like, well, when's the last time you went to El Salvador? And he said, I don't remember. And I'm like, you don't remember when you went to El Salvador? Um, and he's like, bro, I don't remember. And then he told me, it's very important to know that it's not my project. And I'm like, I thought you were the die on this hill guy. Come on. That's kind of the crypto way. You make a big deal about the announcement, and then once it fails, it's just in the memory hole and on to the next thing. Or you pretend it didn't fail. And you see that now with Sam Bankman-Fried, his exchange FTX failed. It was revealed it was a massive fraud. He was stealing all the money out of the back of the exchange, basically. And the crypto guys now are like, well, yeah, like that was pretty bad, but that actually means that crypto is good to go now. The bad guy got caught, and it's safer for the new investors. Or the Celsius guy that I mentioned, who literally his trial is coming up in a few months. It would be probably in like the Hall of Fame of frauds, like by dollar value, and people have just totally forgotten about it and moved on. Or they'll say that wasn't real crypto. If something bad happens, you're like, that wasn't really crypto. That was more of like it was because they organized it in a more traditional finance way. That's why it failed.
Does crypto or NFTs pose a bigger risk to the public?
There's some parts of crypto where I think that you sort of know what you're getting into when you do it. The NFTs might be one of the stupidest areas of crypto, but if you're paying $500,000 for a cartoon image of a monkey, there's a limit to how much sympathy I have for you when the price declines. I mean, I still have some sympathy. And I think the celebrities who are promoting that should feel bad, but I don't think that's not something that's gonna fool my mom. And it did not. I bought one for the book. I didn't really believe in them, but my mom made fun of me right away. The part that I think is more dangerous are some of these crypto products purport to be kind of savings vehicles and to be like a safe alternative. I heard the saddest stories. People who put their life savings in Celsius because they were being told it could earn 8% interest and it was relatively risk-free. The crypto guys, I think, have very successfully promoted this narrative that like the system is rigged, the big banks are a scam, the stock market's a scam, and crypto is like the little guy's revenge. And that was the part of the pitch for Celsius. Those people ended up losing their money. And I think that sales pitch still works is kind of a great sales pitch that works on a lot of things. These days, they use that pitch for a lot of these meme coins and like Dogecoin, these ones that are kind of meant to be silly or they're associated with some kind of celebrity. And I guess we could say like that's harmless. But you know what? There's people, the only winners in these kinds of in most new crypto coins, the winner is the guy who created the coin and sold his made-up coin for real money. And the loser are the regular people who bought this sales pitch that this was somehow different. This was their way to stick it to the man. And maybe you can say they should have known better, but this is kind of an argument for why the Securities and Exchange Commission exists. There's supposed to be rules that govern investments so that people are not presented with easy access to a wide array of appealing scams.
What did you learn from buying and selling your NFT?
The Bored Apes cost $500,000 or whatever, like I was saying. And I was committed to exploring every aspect of this crypto world. And a lot of the crypto guys said to me, you can't know what it's like until you try it. And it kind of started to get to me. I thought, maybe there is something I'm missing by not really going all in and trying out crypto for myself. I'd done little experiments, but I hadn't made big investments in crypto. And I saw that there was going to be a week-long festival in New York. Snoop was going to be there, Eminem. I mean, it seemed like a pretty cool music festival. You had to have one of these Bored Apes to get in. It turned out, as you mentioned, the mutant apes. The apes are cartoon apes. The mutant apes are like cartoon apes whose faces have melted. They're very ugly. And I think perhaps due to their ugliness, they only cost about $40,000. And you could still go to the festival, same as the Bored Ape people. It counted. I said, you know what? The reader of this book wants to know what happens at the festival. You gotta go to the festival, and maybe you will learn something. So my very understanding wife, Nikki, I sat her down after the kids were in bed. I told her about all this, and she'd heard about NFTs from like the news, and she knew if I was asking her about this, it might be pretty expensive. And I guess maybe I should have just come out with it, but I wanted to see what she was gonna guess. So I said, all right, so for the melted ape picture to go to the party, how much you think it's gonna cost? And she was like, all right, well, you sat me down, so maybe 5 grand. And I was just like $40,000. It was just, I mean, it was so laughable. The one seemed at first she was surprised, but then understood that this would be a pretty good material. And as I explained, they really do trade all the time. And if you get one for $40,000, it will probably be worth $40,000 the next day, even if I believe in the long run the value is bound to collapse. So now we were made more nervous, but I didn't get around to buying it right away. It took me a couple weeks to make, and by the time I bought it, it had dropped to $20,000. This was very disconcerting, but I was committed to the plan. So I got this mutant ape. Now mine looked like melty face. He was wearing almost like a sweater made of maggots. And just for the listener who doesn't know about NFTs, basically, in theory, this is art, and your ownership is recorded on a blockchain, and so it's a way to prove that you own digital art. Now, it's not a way to stop anyone else from having the digital art. I mean, they could have it on their phone just the same as you, but you're the only one who can prove that you were dumb enough to pay $20,000. That's recorded forever on the blockchain. So I actually found it pretty informative. The process of most people who trade crypto, even people who invest like a fair amount in crypto, they get it on Coinbase or Robinhood. And the user experience is basically the same as if you were buying a stock on E-Trade or Schwab. But to get these NFTs, you actually have to go to a decentralized exchange and have a real crypto wallet. And I mean, people are saying these NFTs, it can sound kind of fine in theory. Like, what if we had like Yankees tickets on NFTs? Maybe it would prevent, fraudulent tickets, or we could control scalping or something. People come up with these plausible pitches, but in reality, the process of buying this NFT was so torturous that I realized that that any sort of mainstream adoption of this technology was way off. There was no way that anyone who didn't think they were going to get rich was going to go through this horrible process of storing the NFT in a crypto wallet. And I mean, again, and these things, they can sound kind of cool. Oh, like a crypto wallet. Let me tell you what a crypto wallet is. I'm looking at it right now. So I'm on Google Chrome. You got the place where you type the URL. Then you got the place where you have the little icon for the ad blocker. If you have a crypto wallet, you have a little image of a fox head. I mean, there are other crypto wallets, but the one I used is a fox head. It's called MetaMask. And like your $20,000 lives in that fox head. And if you make a typo, anything goes wrong with the fox head, poof, like the money is gone. It was terrible. I was so nervous for the days that my mutant ape, who I named, you don't have to name him. In fact, no one does. It was just me. But I named mine Dr. Scum, and it was terrible. I was really afraid I would lose him from the fox head. But as you said, when I sold him, I only lost maybe $1,000 or $2,000. Never been so happy to lose $2,000, because you can see like on the blockchain these things trade. But as soon as I acquired Dr. Scum, I thought to myself, in my head, I was like, you can sell it. We can sell it whenever you want. But in my heart, I was like, you are the last idiot who will ever pay $20,000 for one of these mutant apes. Like, this ends with you. You'll never get a dime back. But I did. And I have tracked the mutant ape market. And even though most of crypto has really recovered, and Bitcoin price is near a record high, NFTs have not. So Dr. Scum's price has declined to, the going rate for one of those is now about $5,000, which is still pretty good. I mean, for a cartoon ape, I'm surprised it hasn't fallen more. And I was also disappointed. I thought that maybe Dr. Scum being featured in the book would increase his value and he'd become like a more desirable than the other mutant apes, but that didn't happen either.
Why do you think Tether has survived?
It's not what I would have predicted. When I started looking into Tether in 2021, it had grown to about $50 billion. So there's Tether is a token, a crypto token that's supposed to always be worth $1 because each Tether is backed by one real dollar that the company holds for you somewhere. And you can redeem the tokens by sending them back to the company, get the real dollars back. And so when I started looking into it, they were supposed to have $50 billion in the bank somewhere, which is a good chunk of money. Now it's like more than 100 billion. It's doubled since I started looking into it. And there were real questions at the beginning about whether Tether had this money. They wouldn't say where they kept it. And at the time, benchmark interest rates were near zero. And I turned up evidence that Tether had invested some of that money in Chinese commercial paper, which you can kind of think of Tether like a money market fund. And most money market funds avoid Chinese commercial paper for being risky. And there was this big incentive for Tether to invest in risky stuff and earn a profit because Tether pays no interest to its holders. So they're sitting on this big pile of money, and wouldn't it be tempting to use it? And look at Sam Bankman-Fried. He was sitting on all this a big pile of money that people had sent to his exchange, and even though he had no right to, he took it and gambled with it. Now with Tether, there was actually a pretty well documented history of them playing fast and loose with customer money, but benchmark rates are now 5%, and that's really improved Tether's business model. So they can just stick their $100 billion in T-bills and collect $5 billion a year in interest income, which they do not pass on to holders of the token. And according to Tether, that's just what they're doing. And I think even if Tether did have a hole, even if they were short some money in the past, they now have the ability to earn their way out of it. And I'm not saying that there's evidence they did have a hole. And now Cantor Fitzgerald, like a well-regarded investment bank, is vouching for Tether and saying they hold Tether's T-bills. So when I started looking into Tether, the question was more like, do they have this money? Or are they lying about their holdings? Now, by the end of the book, I was more interested in who is using Tether and what are they using it for? And it seems like the authorities are also looking at that. There was a report the other day in the Wall Street Journal that Tether is under investigation for anti-money laundering violations and that the U.S. is considering sanctioning the company, which would make it illegal for Americans to do business with them. And would have a real negative impact on Tether. Because, and the reason for these investigations, as I found in the book, Tether is very useful for anyone who wants to zap dollars around the world with no refunds, from one anonymous wallet to another, with no KYC, don't know your customer requirements. And there's the people who find that most useful are up to no good. And so there's a whole new category of crime that seems to be facilitated by Tether. Now, I should say that Tether, the company, says that they cooperate with law enforcement. They do not, if they catch anyone doing crime with Tether, they'll put a stop to it. They'll freeze their wallets. But because this is crypto, you can hold your Tethers in a wallet that's only identified by a string of letters and numbers, and you can send them to another anonymous wallet. And as long as no one ties you to your wallet address, it's anonymous.
When investigating human trafficking, were you ever worried for your safety? Not
really. For those who are not familiar with this category of crime that I was talking about is called pig butchering. It's a kind of scam where someone sends you a wrong number text message and they try to make friends with you and then convince you to trade crypto, send them some Tether for this trading scheme, and eventually they take all their money. And FBI estimates like $5 billion a year are lost to these. And the worst part is the people who send these text messages, they are also victims. Often they are people from around Southeast Asia who've responded to ads seeking that offer like a high paying job in customer service or at a casino. They get to Cambodia for this job, and then they're trapped in like an office tower where, surrounded by barbed wire with armed guards, passports taken, and they're told, get to work scamming, and if you don't scam enough people, we'll beat you. You can only leave if you pay a ransom. People are killed. And the UN estimates that something like 200,000 people are held in these compounds mostly in Cambodia and Myanmar. So I went to Cambodia to see some of these places for myself. I teamed up with a Cambodian investigative reporter named Mek Dara, and he's like Cambodia is a repressive country. He's like one of the last independent investigative reporters in Cambodia, but also is just like a very chill dude who goes everywhere on his like 30-year-old moped with broken rear view mirrors, and wears jeans and flip-flops to, the president's press conferences. And he had really done a lot to expose this problem, which was like a national embarrassment for Cambodia. And I was very nervous for him because it was clear that this was antagonizing the government. And his newspaper, just before I got to Cambodia, was shut down. Just a few weeks ago, he was arrested on trumped up charges over some tweets that he sent. And it was only through concerted efforts by the international community to publicize his case that, and a visit from a U.S. diplomat, after this U.S. diplomat met with Cambodian government, he was released on bail. So he's out on bail now. For me, just looking around, going back home to safely write the book at my house in Brooklyn, I wasn't too worried. I'm worried for him now, still in Cambodia, and we're counting on him to get the facts out about the people behind these compounds, who are often like really well connected. They operate with impunity there because the criminals that run these compounds have like deep connections to powerful people in the country.
What role does regulatory oversight play?
The crypto guys would say, this is not our fault, and it's definitely not entirely their fault. But let's say that you fell victim to one of these scams, and you tried to wire, $100,000 to a Chinese gangster in Cambodia. Like, your bank's going to call you. There's going to be fraud alerts, and some people still wire the money and get victimized that way. But there's a reason we have all of these checks and balances. And with crypto, you can acquire the crypto on a crypto exchange and then just zap it overseas into the ether, and law enforcement is left with no clues about where it went. Look at ransomware. A hospital gets hacked, its website is shut down, patients, they need to get it back up and running, the whole patient information system's down, and the hackers say, well, you got to send 10 million in Bitcoin to us. And there's a reason they ask for it in Bitcoin, because that's a great way for them to receive that money and to not get caught. You think about like old movies, the hacker, the whole plot of like, what is it, Die Hard 2, where the guy has to, the bad guy has to come collect the payoff, and that's where the cops get him. And if the guy uses crypto, he doesn't have to come collect the payoff. He can sit safe in his compound in Myanmar or in his, hacker den in Estonia and collect the crypto. And so I don't think ransomware could exist without crypto. And pig butchering, it would never have reached this level without this easy way to send money anonymously. And I spoke to, in the book, a veteran human trafficking investigator from Taiwan. And he was like, yeah, like when the bad guys used banks, it left a lot of clues. We didn't always catch them, but at least we had something. Now they're selling these people for Tether, and there's nothing we can't. It's much harder for us. So I think that the crypto guys they bear some responsibility for the system that they've created, even if they're not involved with these crimes or they regret that these things happen, they've created this new system without giving much thought to how it could affect people in the real world.
What are crypto enthusiasts' reactions to your book?
I got to that crypto conference in 2021, and I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna go. I met with all the most prominent people in crypto, and it's so I don't think it's my fault that all of the most famous people in crypto turned out to be massive frauds, or a lot of them. I think that reflects poorly on the industry. And I would ask everybody, hey, can I try your product? Let's see it in action. And I was just really continually underwhelmed. And even now, despite the prices going up, I was at a crypto event last night, and there was a very well-spoken crypto lawyer who's really for crypto, was talking, and he acknowledged, he's like, one area where crypto has fallen behind, and this was kind of funny to hear, is things that people can do with it. And he's like, we really need to work on that. So I don't even think that is, it's not even so controversial. And I mean, even at the time I was deep in this crypto world, a lot, sort of the line a lot of guys would use would be like, well, like 90% of it is scams, but mine's good. And now the people who told me that are like in jail or, getting or bankrupt. So there was quite a lot negative happening in crypto, and I felt like it was my job to write about what was really happening. And I'm less interested in like pie in the sky dreams for crypto, which could be quite interesting, but I wanted to document how this was really playing out in the real world.
Do you see any legitimate uses for the technology?
Right now, crypto is in kind of a war with the SEC, and the SEC wants to bring crypto under like the traditional regime that governs other investments. And I think the crypto guys who were talking last night were basically saying, if that happens, there won't be, it's going to be hard for this industry to exist. It won't be able to do the things that we want to do. And I would say that another way of thinking about that is that what they're implicitly saying is that the good part of crypto is working around regulations. And, not everyone who does that is trying to do human trafficking. Maybe they have, maybe they just think it's fun, or they're trying to come up with interesting products that you can trade. Maybe they want financial privacy because they're worried about the government coming after them. So I'm not saying like everyone in crypto is bad, but I do think like most of crypto is useless, and the parts that are good, if it is useful, is generally as some sort of workaround around financial rules.
What impact do you hope your book has?
I hope to arm people with the facts. And the crypto industry right now, I think they're spending a lot of money on political lobbying. They spend a lot of money on advertising. And I mean, there was an ad that I saw for Coinbase a few months ago that was sort of saying like, this is the revolution that's gonna help you achieve, the financial goals that have been kept from you due to inequality. And I mean, I think that investors should know that there's like a very long track record of these crypto guys saying stuff like that and then stealing your money. So, and I'm not saying Coinbase is going to do that. It seems to be like a more, well-established company. But this is what I would want the takeaway to be. And I don't flatter myself to think that the book will really change anything. But the crypto guys, by the time you hear about some sort of crypto thing, it's too late for you. You're not early. There's insiders who have rigged it. Like if anything is rigged, it's crypto. There's insiders who created this coin. Their friends got good deals on it. By the time you hear about it, you're the exit liquidity, and the insiders are going to sell it to you. And, there are people who get lucky and make money, but it's unlikely. The odds are against you.
Why did you add a new chapter to your book?
Just after FTX collapsed in November 2022, I went back down to the Bahamas and talked myself into my way into Sam Bankman-Fried's penthouse and spent a day with him, hearing sort of his version of events and pressing him on how unlikely they seem to me. And the big development since the book was released just before he went on trial for fraud. And at the time I wrote the book, I had not heard from his co-conspirators, his ex-girlfriend, Caroline Ellison, his right-hand men, Nishad Singh and Gary Wang, and his best friends who traveled the world with him from Berkeley to Hong Kong to the Bahamas. Guys all became billionaires, or I think Caroline did not become a billionaire actually, but these people rose to the top of the crypto world together and then turned on him and testified against him at this trial. And so what we learned at the trial, we learned that this fraud really started early on. And even though I thought things were pretty bad when I finished the book, it was worse than I had thought. Basically, as soon as they started their crypto exchange, FTX, they changed the rules to allow the hedge fund that Sam controlled, Alameda Research. You'd send the customer deposits their $100 at FTX. They look at the phone, they think it's in the FTX app. Actually, it was sent to the hedge fund to go gamble on stuff. And in the excerpt chapter, I go through what we learned from this really dramatic trial where his best friends testified against him. And there was one kind of meta moment at the trial. Sam testified in his own defense. And when I had interviewed him just after the collapse, I asked him, we talked a lot about the relationship between the hedge fund and the exchange. And we talked about some of the details, and I had pressed him on, did Alameda, your hedge fund, really follow the same rules as all the other funds that traded on your exchange? And he had acknowledged to me that it did not. And that had struck me in the moment as a, significant thing to say. And at the trial, his story changed. He was trying to argue that Alameda had followed all the rules, and the prosecutor pulled out a hardcover copy of Number Go Up, walked it over to Sam, and started asking him to refresh his memory about what he had said to me about his hedge fund earlier. So that was a very surreal moment, seeing this book go out into the world and appear at this trial.
What is the mindset of people who hold on to coins?
Bitcoiners, for them, I mean, I'm not saying this about everyone who invests in Bitcoin. Probably a lot of them are just, regular people who've sort of heard, hey, isn't that cool? And thrown some money into it. But the ones who come to the conferences, it's like the Bitcoin conference is almost like a convention for like a multi-level marketing organization, like Amway or something. All the top salesmen have come to this conference to hype each other up about how Bitcoin is the future. And they believe that it's like will one day become like a world currency, and that the people who have the most Bitcoin now will be like gods or kings. And to them, it's drilled into them that the only way to wealth is to just hold it no matter what. And so they're not, it's almost like, if you ever sold, it's sort of like a sin, and they'll sort of repent and buy more later. And these people would often cite, I'd always ask them how they developed this mindset. The most cited person was Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy, who, is always coming out with insane price targets for Bitcoin and has crazy arguments about why, it's going to the moon. But you look at him, he started saying this stuff. He had his company buy a lot of Bitcoin, and it has gone up, and they've made, countless billions of dollars. And so I think in our society, that gives someone a lot of credibility. You think, hey, that person's made a lot of money. There must be something there. That certainly, I met Sam Bankman-Fried you did have this feeling of like, wow, am I sitting with the next Mark Zuckerberg? I mean, this guy has made so much money. He must be pretty smart. And I mean, I think he was actually pretty smart, but sometimes the answer is that, and in his case, he made so much money because he was smart, but also willing to ignore all the rules and take insane risks with his customers' money, which is a crime, which is why he is now in prison.